This nibble originally aired on RSBANDB Update, episode 841, The Zaros Hipster. Enjoy. Now, for question 2, this one's a throwback 10 to 15 years ago. That was a long time ago. RuneScape really only had Seren, Zamorak, and Guthix, who all directly represented classic fantasy archetypes of good, evil, and neutral. For the Lorehounds, there was also this more powerful but really mysterious empty lord. Obviously, the dynamic has changed drastically since then, but with the deaths of Bandos and Guthix, and the temporary absence or evolution of Zaros, it feels like that some of these archetypes are currently left unfilled. Fast forwarding to current events, talking with the gods in the cathedral, or in the Cathedral of Azanodra, they generally seem to view Seren as the most powerful among them, although somewhat mysterious, potentially untrustworthy. They describe Armadyl as untested and maybe annoying, but they also all seem to respect him in their own ways. From my perspective, these descriptions seem to fit nicely with our old archetypes for Zaros and Guthix. Do you think that the lore team is trying to migrate the pantheon back towards simplicity with a single primary deity for each archetype of good, evil, neutral, and powerful/mysterious? Is this just a natural, unplanned progression as the gods become more dynamic characters and respond to world-changing events? Or am I reading too much into these fairly brief dialogues? What are your thoughts?
I think it's more about the dynamic characters, for the sake of everything that's been going on and everything that does to change the dynamic between them.
All right.
Yeah, I do like the idea, though, of Armadyl essentially being the neutral one to some extent, and Seren taking the role of strange and mysterious and unknowable because, well, certainly unknowable given the discussion we just had.
Right.
Yeah, it's changing the sort of appeal they have, I guess, in terms of how the players see them. And on a different note, I definitely see old Zarosians gravitating towards Azanadra instead. Like, he's pretty much just ascended to godhood, and there's already people who say, yep, he's my god now.
Interesting. I assume you mean players, or do you mean...
Yeah, just players.
Okay. That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
So, yeah,
for me, I go back, and prior to the release of Desert Treasure, I was always really interested into the Zaros side of things. But for me, they honestly just made him too mainstream and relied on him too much. You can call me the original Zaros hipster if you want, but that's the way I see myself with this. And I think the whole reason that we have what we do in terms of the way the gods talk and act and whatnot really started to evolve, of course, after Guthix's death. And Jagex is on record of saying that they always had this in mind, that Seren and Zamorak in particular were more than just good versus evil, and they wish they could have expanded on that before World Event 1, and a lot of people would have probably had a different allegiance during that event in terms of how sided it was towards Seredomin's side. But it wasn't until, of course, Dishonor Among Thieves that we learned more that Zamorak isn't necessarily 100% slanted against evil. He is slanted towards chaos in order to prevent stagnation, because, as we all know, all stagnant empires will die. Mm-hmm. And that's the way he sees things. But at the same time, now this is going to look weird looking at it from a different perspective. I just took the quintessential way that RuneScape lore has been looked at for the last 8 years or so. But if you look at any other major story franchise out there, what do you got? You got your good, your evil, your neutral, and sometimes you're downright mysterious. And you can look to many, many different franchises to see that. And based on the way some of this stuff has gone recently, in terms of just some of the tropes they've relied on, I wouldn't be surprised if they wanted to go back to something a little bit more simpler that everybody could just see, right on the tin.
Marketable, dare I say.
Yeah, there you go. That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah, I don't think there is a plan. I think it is a result of the way that they have began to flesh out the gods.
Yeah.
And I actually think that started before Dishonor Amongst Thieves with Death of Chivalry. That's where you start to, you're like,
true.
oh, there's another side to Sarah Doman and all this. And I'm okay with that, because I think the pantheon is just, it's kind of big. And any way that they can do that without willy-nilly killing gods off, it's good. I'm not a fan of that at all, because it makes, if you can kill a god off like they do, then you could kill off any god, and it's bad. It's like if it was wrestling, this would be bad for business. You know what I mean? Like, no. But I don't think it was planned. I just think that now they see it and they're like, oh, well, we can get we can cover all the same angles and make the characters more richer, without having 16 different gods.
But at the same time, they can all stand for the core main elements that Thaxi has pointed out while doing that.
Right. Yeah.
I'd say there's different ways to approach this. You've got perhaps the D&D alignment approach as an example. We've got, this is chaotic good, neutral good, lawful evil, or whatever. And then you've got the sort of historical pantheons, like Greek gods, Roman gods, Viking gods, whatever, where you've got these characters who have so much centuries of history and many, many stories where they do so many things and just infinite connotations all building up on each other. And I think, it's a bit of both, where you can simplify them down to certain elements they might be associated with, but they've also got so much going on that's just built up over time.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. And, I think that anybody listening to this has been around for a little bit and is probably going to want something a little bit more than, just the basic good, neutral, evil kind of thing / mysterious, because we are questers, we are lore players, and after all, this is a podcast about RuneScape. But at the same time, anybody who has started playing recently and is just learning about this and takes a stroll into the cathedral and reads the text that's on display has a simple way of understanding everyone that can pivot nicely into the more finer-grained attributes. So, as much as we'd like to say there's a huge change coming, I actually don't think it's a huge change. I think that they're just marketing it slightly differently for people who are experiencing these characters for the first time.
They're solidifying things.
Yeah, they're solidifying things, but at the same time, if you dig down deep enough, their core elements, as have been established, aren't just being thrown out the window and being made simpler. It's all still there. You just got to go a little bit deeper below the surface. Because if you look at what was assigned for these guys, if you look at the good Sarah Doman, you can see what he wants to do is good. You can look at Zamorak's like for chaos is particularly evil. You can look at the way that Armadyl handled himself in this dialogue as neutral, and everything that Seren has said, well, that's a little bit mysterious. So it all fits in the tin nicely, I think. And I think it's good marketing. So. Yeah,
I mean, at the end of the day, if I have my choice, I like my gods simple and my humans complicated. Right? I mean, that's where you can really put the intrigue and they're right. Good, but they got a mean streak, or that's an evil SOB, but he sends his mom Christmas card, or calls her kid on his birthday. I don't know, but gods aren't supposed to have like redeeming qualities like that. You know what I mean? Like, or at least in my head, they don't.
That's a shift in RuneScape over time, hasn't it been? Yeah. Gods as gods versus gods as characters.
Yes.
Very true point.
Very good way of putting it.
Very true point. You can find full episodes of RSBANDB Update right here on this YouTube channel. If you found this video useful or just enjoyed it, like and subscribe, or leave a comment.